So yes, my TED talk today is a mistake, and I shouldn't be here. Terrible mistake. The fact that I'm standing now here in front of you about to give a talk is an error, a system glitch. The message I'm about to transfer to you will be nothing but miscommunication. But that shouldn't surprise you, should it? You should have got used to it by now, as any messages that are being transmitted to you today in the 21st century are nothing but miscommunications. So fake news, misleading political slogans, the use of information as a weapon, interruptions to the flow of communications, imperfections of knowledge as a result. These are not new features today, but they're the ones that have started to become the most noticeable characteristic of the use of communications media in the 21st century. Yet, there is no coherent single theory or school of thought that would research and conceptualize this phenomenon. So to rethink these ideas in a radical new way, we've teamed up with Dr. Tim Barker from the University of Glasgow to commission leading international scholars in media philosophy, communications and noise studies to reflect on this condition. What we came up with is a book called Miscommunication, which is out next year and includes contributions from a variety of different films, from media archaeology, music, language, noise, to film studies, coding and politics. To our surprise and delight, the biggest names in media theory today had a lot to say about mistakes and have made a lot of mistakes, which proves that this topic is indeed getting its momentum today. To add to this, major artistic festivals and film festivals, such as, for example, Ars Electronica or Berlinale, had miscommunications, errors, glitches or mistakes as their thematic focuses in 2019. So we decided to follow this zeitgeist and to give it a little bit of theory. So my TEDx talk is a mistake, and what I'm about to tell you will be misleading. But let's investigate what exactly happens when communication breaks down. How can we understand our place in the world that is dominated by misleading information? And is this the condition for miscommunication, mistakes and errors that is characteristic of our digital culture in general? To begin to think about this condition, to begin to explore this uncertainty, a good place to start is the philosopher Michel Serres. In the traditional model of communication, there are two parties, the sender and the receiver. And then there is the message that goes from sender to the receiver, and it's all simple and almost perfect. Yet, has it ever really happened to you? Have you ever transmitted anything when you were sure that it didn't have the noise in between, that it really arrived the way it was sent? So for Serres, any model of communication has three parties, still the sender, still the receiver, but there's also a third. Someone who always seeks to interrupt communication, to introduce a miscommunication, to embrace noise. For Serres, no message can be transmitted, no message indeed can take on meaning without the third, without being miscommunicated. This third person, who we would exclude previously, takes command now. And this doesn't necessarily have negative connotations, though often it does, but can sometimes be positive and productive, like this TED talk, which is a mistake. But you're still with me, aren't you? Which means you're still interested and maybe a little bit intrigued, and this is normal. All mistakes seem to have this special energy, this special creative force that keeps us with them. And we'll try to explore a little bit of it now. So to assume imperfections and mistakes are our creative forces, some reassurance comes from another philosopher, Umberto Eco. So Eco situates mistakes in the very center of language. He sees the possibility of making mistakes, which takes many forms throughout his writing, deceiving, misleading, indeed lying, as the main feature of human language. A dog doesn't lie. If it barks, there is someone there. So a possibility of misleading through language is what makes us human, also to die. But so everybody lies, as another non-fictional philosopher would say. In Serendipitous Language and Lunacy, Eco embarks on a journey of finding a perfect human language. However, perfection here doesn't mean the absence of mistake, as one might think, quite the opposite. Whatever Eco discovers on this journey in this book is a mistake, what he calls a force of falsity. And I quote him here. "I want to show how a number of ideas that today we consider false actually changed the world, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, and how, in the best instances, false beliefs and discoveries, totally without credibility, could then lead to the discovery of something true, or at least something we consider true today." End of quote. World history is largely based on these mistakes, becoming no more than a theater of illusions. Take Columbus, who discovered America in a mistaken search for India, or an example most dare to echo himself, the case of Gabriel de Fournier and his language-building ambitions. Attempts to create a universal language formulated solely by human ingenuity were incredibly popular in the 12th century. Artificially constructed by the power of human mind, this new language was supposed to be as perfect as the human thought could make it. However, Fournier invents a language that can't work because he invents it deliberately to parody other languages. What is important to echo in this story is that in doing so, Fournier helps us see, perhaps beyond his intentions, why, on the contrary, the imperfect languages that we all speak work fairly well, including the new digital language that we are now embracing. Imperfection is the condition of our existence. So what is this power that leads us on this path of mistakes and eventually becomes the main engine of history? Echo's contemporary, a Russian formalist critic, Viktor Shklovsky, explains this power through the privilege of creativity. In 1981, in the end of his career, he publishes a book entitled Energy of Delusion. The expression comes from the phrase by the writer Leo Tolstoy, claiming that this energy of delusion is the only energy he needs for writing, and he's written quite a bit. And I quote Tolstoy here, "I'm lacking the energy of delusion, this spontaneous energy that's impossible to invent, and it's impossible to begin writing for me without it." End of quote. Analyzing this technique, Shklovsky equals delusion to the free search within the creative process, or daydreaming. This search requires enormous time and effort. To think through a million of possible connections in order to choose just one is terribly difficult. Another phrase by Tolstoy from the book. But in this search for truth, it's search for truth in a novel and it's search for truth in life. And let's take the first draft of Anna Karenina, for example, where Anna, you wouldn't believe it, was ugly, fat, and graceless woman. That was his intention. But as the work on the novel continued, Anna became beautiful and graceful, someone we sort of know today, not quite Keira Knightley though. And Tolstoy finally comes to terms with the character. He confesses actually that Anna became his adopted child. Through the mistakes and imperfection of his first draft, Tolstoy found his true heroine, who we keep admiring today. The truth of novel, as Shklovsky claimed, the essence of true creativity. Talent, one might say, demands delusions. For it demands strain, nourishment, material. It demands a labyrinth of linkages into which it has been called to investigate. This embracing, almost worshipping attitude towards delusions, mistakes, imperfections, lying, deeply rooted in the fake news-free 18th and 19th century, even 12th century, are adopted as a methodology of research by critical minds of the 20th century, who I quoted Michel Serres, Umberto Eco, Viktor Shklovsky, is perhaps something that could be transferred to the hoax of our age. Being more attentive to these imperfections, understanding mistakes as the hosts of communication systems, following Serres, or following Shklovsky as the material of the everyday from which all is molded, can produce a powerful energy, if not to counterbalance the contemporary toxic narratives, then to accept and adopt them. So this TEDx talk was a mistake. But I hope by now you got an idea of how to deal with mistakes. And if not, just one final quote from the Pulitzer Prize-winning American Pastoral by Philip Roth. "The fact remains that getting people right is not what living is about. It's getting them wrong that is living. Getting them wrong and wrong and wrong, and then, on careful reconsideration, getting them wrong again." Thank you.